Kambo is a healing ritual used mainly in South America. It's named after the poisonous secretions of the giant monkey frog, or Phyllomedusa bicolor. I almost certainly said that wrong, so forgive me. The frog secretes the substance as a defense mechanism to kill or subdue animals that try to eat it. Some humans, on the other hand, apply the substance to their body for its alleged health benefits. Indigenous people have used Kambo for centuries to heal and cleanse the body by strengthening its natural defenses and warding off bad luck. It was also believed to increase stamina and hunting skills. These days, shamans and naturopathic practitioners still use it for cleansing the body of toxins as well as treating numerous health conditions. Proponents of Kambo believe it can help with a range of conditions, including addiction, Alzheimer's, anxiety, cancer, chronic pain, depression, diabetes, HIV, infections, and vascular conditions. So we're joined by Lisa Silva today. Lisa, thank you for taking the time to sit with us today and talk about Kambo. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. And thank you so much for interviewing me on your show. I'm really excited to share my knowledge around Kambo. We're excited because I'm super interested in learning new stuff. Where did you first hear about this, and what made you want to learn about using it on others? Yes, it's actually through my own personal healing journey with the medicine. So Kambo helped a big part of my own healing, where I had a cyst in my brain. I suffered from a condition called fibromyalgia, which was chronic pain all over the body. And through long periods of time of treatment through doctors, normal avenues, medications, and so forth, I've gone on a personal healing journey. And one of the tools that I used on this journey of healing myself was Kambo. So this is really where my interest in Kambo was really cemented through my own experience and healing myself.
Okay.
So I then decided to train and become much more involved in the use of Kambo.
So, okay, you said about training. So do you get like certifications, and like, are there a certain number of ceremonies that have to take place before you can become certified, or how does that work?
Yes, very good question, and this is very important. Kambo, for the most part, is a fairly safe therapy to use, but we must be very careful, especially in the West with modern-day illnesses, medications, and so forth. So Kambo should only be administered by people that are well-trained and have experience in working with this type of medicine. There is a few organizations out there that do treat people to work with Kambo. I also train people to work with Kambo and certain protocols that I've developed over the years. But yeah, there are certain organizations that do treat people to work with it ethically and safely.
What kind of safety measures do you have in place during the ceremony? I ask because I was reading an article about, I think this has been made illegal, maybe I'm incorrect or I have old information, but in Australia I was reading about this guy that actually died during a Kambo ceremony, but he was also on ayahuasca as well. So I don't know if there was some sort of reaction to them both being in his systems.
Yes, I think this is a very important part. First of all, there is the biggest tool we have is the screening. So every person that wants to sit with Kambo should go through a thorough screening process. So this process really involves checking their medical history, seeing what medications they're on, and also checking for certain contraindications. Like people, for instance, that are epileptic should not take it, people that have had heart problems, people that are at risk at certain things. So there's quite a few different things that has to be considered before somebody would be considered to be safe to use Kambo.
Okay.
So the situations that you're talking about, yes, there is a few people that have died from Kambo around the world. And in all of these cases, I would say it was absolute neglect from the people serving it. on two fronts. One is there was no proper screening. Secondly, that they weren't properly trained in spotting when something goes wrong, applying proper first aid, and then getting help accordingly. So one of the cases I think that is very important is people are made to drink a lot of water before they take Kambo, sometimes excessive amounts of water. This is a problem because it creates two different problems. The one is it increases the amount of pressure within the esophagus when somebody purges or when the water comes out. So the problem with this is if they're already at risk of having something like esophageal rupture, where there could be a slight weakening in the esophagus, and so this could then become a medical emergency. So drinking excessive amounts of water has another risk to it that is called hyponatremia. So people have passed away from this, and it's actually from drinking an excessive amount of water. So it depletes the sodium levels in the blood and to a dangerous level. So there's a lot of things that has to be considered to use this specific therapy safely.
Can you explain the process of the Kambo ceremony, like the preparation, application, like any additional rituals or practices that are involved?
Yes, certainly. So although there is also modern ways that we now work with Kambo. So, Kambo is an ancient medicine from South America. And I think I also wanted to pick up on the point here that they don't just make these secretions as a defense mechanism. They also use the secretion to keep themselves healthy because it's highly antifungal, it's highly antiseptic, it's got all of these health benefits to keep the frogs healthy because they live in the Amazon rainforest. So these secretions, are very carefully collected, and this is applied on a stick. And this is usually people that receive Kambo have the stick that looks like egg white. So the way that it is applied is you make a very superficial burn to the skin. There's the toppest layer of the skin. So there's no blood. It's just that top. It's less than a graze, really. And then there's a little bit of water applied to the Kambo. And then this congeals into a small point that is then applied to this open point on the body. The reaction time is quite quick, depending on people, it's slightly different, and also where it is applied. So it could take up to a minute to 3 to 5 minutes for the medicine to start taking effect within the body. It is still served within the traditional way of the way that the tribes use it. So where there is still ceremony around it, there is still an opening of the ceremony. Some songs are sung by some practitioners. So we are still trying to respect that cultural background of Kambo because I work with many medical professionals over the years. And they can understand scientifically what happens to them in their body. Blood pressure goes up. They can feel their heart rate. They can feel all these things happening, and they understand this. But they say something else happens that they can't scientifically explain. Oh, they feel better. Things are better in their lives. Things flow better in their lives. And, this is the other aspect of Kambo where we say it purges and it cleanses the body, the mind, and emotions. And so it is a really holistic approach to the entire body.
So you're going to burn me, and then you're going to put this stuff, you're going to put Kambo on me. Where do you get this? Because I'm sure you can't just go on to Amazon or, ironically, Amazon, or any website and just buy it. Because it seems like it's something, because it's almost like pufferfish, where unless you know what you're doing, I can take you out by serving you poorly prepped fugu. So where does someone come across this, and how do you know that you're getting authentic Kambo or the effective Kambo? Because as you know, the internet is just full of wonderful pockets of just madness that don't really follow all the rules always.
Yes. I would not recommend that anybody just buy Kambo on the internet. I know there is sites where you can, but I would not recommend this. I won't recommend anybody takes Kambo by themselves because, there is some risks associated with this medicine, and it is not serious risks. Sometimes people could pass out from Kambo, and if you're on your own, that's not a good idea. Kambo, for the most part, is a very safe medicine, but people should not try and take it themselves. There is a lot of different things that need to be considered for them to really take it safely. So we source and buy directly from the Matses tribe. So we do buy from Amazon, but not the same Amazon that you refer to. Right. So we buy directly from the Matses tribe. So we know the people that harvest this medicine, and we know exactly where it comes from, how the frogs were treated. Because, there is always the question, how ethical is it, how are the frogs being treated? There's no evidence that there's any impact that we have directly on the frogs. The tribes, and specifically the Matses, they are quite aware that if they hurt the frog, they believe that this will cause them bad luck. So they treat them with absolute respect. So, of course, this is not to say that everybody works like that. But we try and source directly from the tribes. And whenever we pass any of the Kambo on to any of the practitioners that is registered with us, we do not make any profit from it. So all the money that is from Kambo goes directly to the tribe. So there's also an exchange of working with them. And for the most part, people think that the tribes in the Amazon live deep in the jungle. The reality is they have iPads and Nikes.
With regards to like this type of medicine, I know why. I don't want to say why because it's obviously money driven, but do you think that there will ever be an adaptation or an exception of things like this that are more holistic in mainstream medicine? Or is it just something that they just don't want to get into and they're just far too into synthetics? Because I feel like a lot of our real healing comes from stuff that's already here, and we're the cause of all of the stuff that's really happening to us through this bad diets and so on.
Absolutely. And I think since the 70s and 80s, the pharmaceutical companies have already studied the frog Phylomedusa bicolor, was, very, very carefully studied it. They have isolated some of the peptides within Kambo. They are actually registered to some pharmaceutical companies already. So like, for instance, Dermaceptin B2 is one of the peptides within Kambo that is showed scientific research that it actually inhibits the growth of prostate cancer. So it is also a great peptide because it creates this permeability between the blood-brain barrier. And so what that does is it also helps to effectively deliver cancer treatment to the brain. So many of these, I think there's something like 17 patents that has been lodged in the US alone around certain peptides in Kambo. But the whole concoction that makes up Kambo, that is very difficult to just say that they're going to isolate all of that and use it. Because they can use one in isolation, but there's not a real good understanding of exactly what the whole concoction together does. And when two of them mix together and the one helps the other, what really happens? So we need a lot more research to be done around this medicine. But of course, there is not a lot of funding or interest from science or pharmaceutical companies with this type of treatment.
So we're back
but yet it's vastly different as well. How we use it in the West is different to how the tribes have used it. I think you also mentioned in the beginning there was really interesting that, in the jungle, it was all about successful hunting. The best hunters would get the best wives, and, their standing within the community would have been dependent on how successful they are as hunters. So Kambo played a great part in this because it gave greater endurance, it gave strength, So they used it also as a vaccine against various different illnesses in the jungle. But in the West, with all our lifestyle that is so different, and the medications and all the things in terms of how we live, we needed to adapt the medicine as well. This is where we had to make this crossover. But there's amazing people involved with this medicine around the world.
How do you determine the appropriate dosage for each individual? Because I'm sure that's a crucial part. Their health history. You mentioned their health history and so on. Mm-hmm. But does it matter if I'm 200 pounds or if I'm 100 pounds, or is that not relevant?
I think each person has to be very carefully assessed. So, any responsible practitioner will only give you 1 point of Kambo. So this is the 1 point of Kambo. This will be a test point. This is always a very good indication to see how does a person sit with this medicine? How does the body react to this medicine? That gives you a really good indication of how their reaction is going to be to the medicine. And then you can adapt your dosage accordingly. So I'm always, and all the responsible practitioners would always start at a low dose and then build it up in small increments. So, less is more here as well. It's not always about going more and more and more. But there is different treatment protocols depending on why people are seeking Kambo. I'll use an example, for instance, something like Lyme's, which is a very difficult condition to treat. So with Kambo, sometimes it all depends on, how the person reacts. Do they have an Herxheimer effect or a reactivation of this Borealis virus that is so deeply within the body? So we have to keep adapting how we treat people with the medicine. And of course, you're not going to give it to somebody at 80 years old with heart problems. So it's really on an individual basis.
What is your approach to aftercare and integration supports? So you've done the treatment. Is there a certain diet that you recommend afterwards? A certain amount of rest? Is there additional guidance? Do they have to keep coming back? Does it wear off over a certain amount of time, or is it kind of like acupuncture where you just have to keep coming until it's fixed? Or
yeah, I think it's important here to understand how Kambo works within the body. One, I think, of the main things that is really incredible about Kambo, it really supports the body in a way that it helps to clear out the lymphatic system. So it's one of the most clogged up systems within our body. The lymphatic system doesn't have a pump. It doesn't have a pump which cleans it out. So, gravity helps with that and exercise and so forth. But Kambo helps to create more lymph. So more lymph fluid that is created are taken up by the lymph nodes, and then this helps to also clean out the system. I believe this cleansing of the lymphatic system also then enables the body to do its own healing. I don't believe it is purely just the Kambo doing the magic, although it is. But I think it also helps to get the body to a point where it can actually help or support itself in many ways. So, working out treatment plans for people is a big part of the screening process. So it all depends on the individual, on their physical health, their lifestyle, and so forth. And then you can say, you're going to need at least 3 treatments, 4 treatments. I always tell people, have 1 treatment. Let's see how we go. Let's see what the result is from that. And then we can book in further treatments and see how we can schedule, to get the best possible result, safe result.
What kind of fees would be associated with something like this? Because let's just say I'm interested in doing it. I'm watching this podcast right now. Is there a certain type of price point that I should be expecting to pay?
I think this very much depends on practitioners. I would say it all depends. There's people that live in central London that charges £450 to £500 a session.
Okay.
But then there's people living on the outskirts of London that charges 100, 150. So it all depends, on the level of experience the practitioner have, What type of treatment they are going to provide. Is it for like highly advanced medical conditions? Is it just for a basic detox? Is it part of a group of people? Is it going to be 5 people in a group? Is it going to be a 1-to-1? All of these things will determine how much it's going to cost you. Sometimes you can do also in a retreat session. So when there's a retreat setting, you would obviously pay a little bit more. So it all depends, locally. I wouldn't say a good practitioner necessarily is the most expensive one, but it is important to make sure that when you vet a practitioner, that you understand that they are properly trained, they have all the necessary certification, even in first aid and so on. So it is as important to find the right practitioner as the right price.
Yeah. So you mentioned like having the right certifications in the health background. So how do you handle adverse reactions or complications when you're having a ceremony? Have you ever come across that? Maybe you haven't.
Yes. So I've served close to 2,000 people.
Oh, wow.
And the only times was two occasions that I've had a medical emergency. So there's a couple of things to look out for during Kambo. So if somebody passes out, so this sometimes can happen because the blood pressure goes up from Kambo and then it goes down again. This is a normal reaction from the medicine, but if it goes down too quickly, you could lose consciousness. This is sometimes just for a second, 2 seconds. It could be sometimes for 4 or 5 seconds. You would put a person in a recovery position at that point, because if they need to purge, they will still purge whether they passed out or not. So you've got to be very careful that people don't inhale any of the purging that happens or, during it. It's very, very rare that something will go wrong with Kambo. But, the things to look out for is excessive pain during the ceremony, especially in the throat, around the stomach. If there's any indication that something is wrong, if somebody loses consciousness for, more than a minute. I've never observed this personally. For the most part, I do my screening very carefully and I work on very slow increments with clients, and therefore you can almost eliminate the risk and work very carefully with it. I have served people a few times where people are not always honest in their screening. So this is common in many medicine practices, alternative practices. People are desperate by the time they come to a Kambo practitioner. So sometimes people are not very truthful, and somebody's had a concussion and they had a problem with their brain, which they didn't disclose, and they had like a seizure during the Kambo experience. Everything turned out okay in the end, but I did call an ambulance just to make sure that the person were fine and everything checked out okay. But you just got to be careful and carefully monitor people.
Is the application of it the same no matter what the ailment might be, or does it always go to the same location? Like, do you always just do it on the shoulder, or how does it work? Like, what is the process of application? So do I need to, you've done your pre-screen and you found out that I have arthritis, we'll say. Is the process the same for everybody, or does it differentiate between each ailment?
Yeah, so there's 2 trains of thought here. So the one part is the scientific part. We know that Kambo is made up of this concoction of peptides. Enters the body through the lymphatic system, and it does all these amazing things. So no matter where you apply Kambo, really, it's going to enter the body through the lymphatic system. So you're going to get more or less the same result in terms of what's going to happen in the body of detoxing, cleansing, all the benefits that comes with that. But there's another part to it where, there's an underlying cause for many people why they have these diseases, or, they have mental fog, brain fog. There's something that is not flowing correctly. And even for some illnesses, there is an underlying cause, which is many times emotional. So there is different ways that you can apply Kambo. So there's a basic Kambo that is served the ways that the tribes do it. So it's usually on the upper arm for men and it's on the lower leg for women. But you can apply it in different places on the body. I've designed a system that also works with the Nadi system. The Nadi system is more of an Ayurvedic practice. And so I've made a crossover between the two over the years, working out very specific protocols. This is done on the back. So there's three main lines, the Sushumna, and then there is the Ida and the Pingala. So the one is the masculine line, the one is the feminine line. And they sort of cross over on the back. So Kambo is carefully applied to certain parts of this, depending on where, through working with a client, that they might have, say, an imbalance in the solar plexus channel. So, where it might be they are too much in the feminine, in the ego. So they want to rebalance that. So we can then apply Kambo in a specific place. And I've found over the years of research, working with different clients and making many mistakes, ideal placement of different places with Kambo.
Interesting. And how long, you said it's called Kambo Nadi? Is that what you said? The one that...
That's correct, yes.
Where did you find that? And is that something that's very niche, or will I be able to find that as I travel to other locations, say I'm in America or in the UK? Is that something that's you're training other people to do, or is that something that is specific to your organization?
Yeah, there's something I'm training others to do.
Okay.
So this is very specifically my protocol.
Right.
So I've designed it over many years in exactly how to work with Kambo and on these specific Nadi points, but also using sacred geometry, because we believe everything is vibration. So, within the Nadi system, we also believe that there is not a balance within the masculine or the feminine aspect of any part of the body, that we can, for instance, use the tetrahedron, which is like a triangle with a point in the middle. So we can use this to introduce fire, which is the fire element. We can bring more fire back into the Pingala line, which is the masculine line, that can then bring balance. So this system I've developed over many years. So I'm training existing practitioners that can just take it as an additional protocol and then learn this. Or I'm treating people from scratch completely how to do Kambo right up to the point of using these advanced protocols with the Kambo Nadi. So the Kambo Nadi really started, I was trained by another organization. And they did train you on how to work on the chakras. So you could apply Kambo to the chakras. And although it's a very powerful experience, I found that afterwards people would very quickly go back to it almost being the same as a normal Kambo experience. So the outcome at the end of it was more or less the same, whether you applied it to the leg or whether you applied it on the chakra. Although during the experience it's more intense. But then I started to study more and more into how does the chakras operate? What provides them with the energy, the prana that goes up, the chi that goes into the body? How does it work? And so through this study, I also spoken and worked with quite a few Ayurvedic doctors and really got a good understanding of how this modality works. So we know Kambo can introduce both fire as well as cold, so it can really balance the system depending on how you want to do it. I tried it initially and then it didn't work very well. I have to say I create more imbalance in the beginning of this protocols because if you don't do it correctly, you can bring imbalance in the one or the other. So if you bring too much fire, for instance, in the masculine, you'll find the person is irritated, they find it difficult to sleep. So you get all these reports of people having too much fire introduced into the system. So over years, I refined it and introduced certain sacred geometries that gives great vibration in bringing this balance, depending on where you use it.
That's super interesting. And while you were explaining all that to me, someone popped into my head that is really deep into this. So that means we're going to have you back, and I'm going to have them here with me, hopefully, so that they can fire away all these next level questions that if I ask you, they're going to sound like I'm trying to talk quantum physics with you, and I don't know anything about quantum physics. So I'll just save myself the embarrassment and not say anything else about it until the next time we meet, because it's super fascinating. I had another question for you, but it's out of there. So where can people find you if they want to ask questions, or maybe they want to come? Do you do sessions where people can come to a retreat, like you said, or is it mostly one-on-one for you?
Yes, so I work from a retreat center in Portugal, where I live, but I also support a lot of practitioners in the UK, also even in Canada and all over, that I've personally trained. And so if people want to find any of these practitioners or get any advice from myself, they can do so on my website, which is kambotree.com, which refers to the Kambo tree frog. So kambotree.com. It also lists other practitioners that are trained by myself. And if anybody's wanting to train, there's also some training programs available. But I'm always happy to speak to people regarding any specific health conditions they might have and where I think Kambo might work, and sometimes where Kambo won't be a good option. Because for some things, it simply is not a good option.
When would it not be a good option? When would you refer someone to go try something else other than this?
I think there's really good friends in medicine with this medicine, with Kambo. So there's a lot of doctors, and I've worked with many over the years, even where they have their patients come to me. Not they referred them to me, but where people come to me for treatment, but I do work hand in hand with people, the doctors, consultants, as well as people that are addicted. But, Kambo should not be used as a replacement for proper therapy. So I say hand in hand, it could really, really, really go. So there's many doctors that are very, very good friends. But I would be very, very mindful to say that Kambo is definitely a cure for anything, because it isn't. It's something that people could approach. But in cases where I'd say people should definitely not take it, is if you've ever had a heart attack, problems with your heart, pacemaker, if you've ever had a stroke, any of those things, you have to be very, very careful.
Because it's coming from an animal, is it vegan friendly? Is just probably the question, I guess. This
is an interesting one, because a lot of people come to me over the years that are vegan. And, they ultimately, it's a personal choice. Vegans are very, very specific. The people that are vegan do not use anything that comes from an animal. To be truly vegan is a really extreme life of, avoiding anything with animals. And of course, if this is what people want to do, great, that's wonderful. But for most people in the world, I think they probably fall under the vegetarian option, although they believe themselves to be vegan, but they are mostly vegetarian. And people do use Kambo.
Nice. Shoot me your social medias again and your website, and where people can find you, so we can have that up on the screen at the end here.
Yeah, no problem. So it is kambotree.com. We're also on Facebook, Kambotree. And we're also on Instagram as Kambotree.
Guys, go check that out. Lisa Silva, amazing. We will have her back with some mind care guests, hopefully in the near future. I appreciate your time today, and I learned a lot. Hopefully the listeners learned as much, and I'm sure I'll be flooded with questions, so I'll have a new sheet of things to ask you the next time we have you on the show.
No problem. Thank you. It was really good to talk to you.
It was our pleasure.
And I hope Kambo becomes part of many people's journeys.
I'm sure it will. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. If you are only listening and you want to watch, we've got YouTube back up again. So they finally let us play on the YouTube space again. So you can hit up those pages as well over, just search at V3TV UK for the YouTube channel. And of course, we're all on all the social media spots, so you know where to find us. Thanks, guys. Peace.